Welcome to the Epic Cloud Security event. Today we'll be live streaming from Silicon Valley to you in nearly 50 viewing events. New York to London, Paris, Madrid, Munich, Milan, Istanbul, Sydney, and of course, Plano, Texas. We'd like to extend a special welcome to our valued partners and customers watching around the globe. And now, please welcome our Chief Marketing Officer, René Bonvanie.
Well, thank you, Todd. We have an epic program for you today focused on all things cloud and specifically cloud security. As a society, we are going through a massive digital transformation. This transformation allows us to drive more business, use less energy, create more shareholder value, or provide better healthcare. And the list doesn't stop there. But the key to digital transformation is trust. Trust in the data and trust in the technology. Against this backdrop, the cloud is a transformational technology. What we hear from you again and again is that you need the right security technology and approach to embrace the cloud, a security architecture that accelerates your digital transformation and doesn't hold you back. Today, we'll be hearing from experts about how to manage the change associated with the cloud, how to set priorities and resolve potential conflicts, and how to achieve a frictionless approach to security that will propel your success in the cloud. Clearly, there's a lot to talk about: your people, your processes, and the technology. So let's get right to it. First and foremost, some housekeeping. Today's Twitter hashtag is Epic Cloud Security. So if you want to add your voice to the conversation, don't be shy, and we'll try and answer any questions or include your comments as we go. Moving on, we're honored to have cloud experts from Capital One, the Coca-Cola Company, PwC, and Schlumberger who will share their experiences in the cloud, what worked, what didn't, and how their cloud and security teams have worked together to deliver on their promise. But wait, there's more. Lee Klarich is in the house. Yes, our very own product officer will be discussing some of our innovative and groundbreaking new offerings and capabilities in the cloud, and how our approach eliminates the friction and trust challenges so often associated with cloud security. And he'll do so with the proud support of our partners Amazon, Microsoft, and Google. Okay, let's keep things rolling by introducing our first speaker. Salim Ismail is a lot of things. He's a best-selling author of the book Exponential Organizations. He's also a renowned technology strategist, an entrepreneur who sold his 8th company, Engstro, to Google in 2010, and who also ran Yahoo's Brickhouse incubator for several years. He was the founding executive director and global ambassador at Singularity University since 2008. Salim advises global CEOs and heads of state on exponential organizations, innovations, and growth, and believes that if you're not disrupting your business or industry, somebody else is. So here to talk about how security and cloud teams can get out of their own way to disrupt and innovate by taking advantage of accelerating technologies like artificial intelligence, neuroscience, and big data analytics, please join me in welcoming Salim Ismail.
Thank you. All right. Good morning, everyone. I want to give you a sense of how pervasive this transformation that we're going through, but more importantly, what can you do about it? We're entering a world in which technology is driving us very, very quickly forward in a way that we've never seen before. I wrote this book a few years ago highlighting how this actually operates and how new organizations are leveraging new technologies like the cloud to scale in ways that we've never seen before. But basically, we're moving the entire world to the cloud, right? And this is causing some extraordinary tensions in all of our organizations. We're turning brands into experiences. We're turning products into services. Really, the big question is, how do you organize for this future that's coming? One of the key insights that came a few years ago was from this graph that Ray Kurzweil put together. He was looking at Moore's Law, and he went all the way back to 1900 and found that we've actually been doubling computational price performance for 100 years. Way before Gordon Moore made his predictions. And the key question that he asked when he saw this data is, why is that curve so smooth and so predictable? We've had wars and recessions and ups and downs in the industry. You should expect a very jagged stock market type of shape, not this very, very steady progression that we see here. And after researching this for like 10 years, Ray came up with a really fundamental observation, which is once you turn any domain or discipline or technology area into an information-driven environment and virtualize it, you enter a doubling pattern. And most importantly, once that doubling pattern starts, it does not stop. And that's very hard for us to get our heads around. We've seen several technologies now go through kind of an S-curve type of a shape, but something else always takes over the curve when you have this virtualized environment, this cloud environment. And this is a fundamental insight that we're seeing. It led Peter Diamandis, our other main founder at Singularity University, to write this book called Abundance, charting out that if we can actually harness this pace of change and this acceleration effectively, that we'll soon have an abundance of healthcare, clean water, energy, education in about a decade. And what does the world look like if that's the case? So that's kind of one key framing that we found. That doubling pattern that we've seen in computation that we've lived through with all of our devices, we're now seeing that in about a dozen technologies. Drones, 3D printing, neuroscience, AI, robotics, Bitcoin. We have now about a dozen technologies all doubling in this way. And we have never seen this before. It's a completely unique time in the history of mankind. In the past, maybe one technology was accelerating or another was, but now we have a full dozen, right? And each of them is accelerating, but where they intersect, that adds a whole other multiplier to the equation. And the aggregate effect is quite profound. Here's a 700-year look at the cost of light. And what you can see here is it's very, very expensive, then it plateaus for a while, and then it crashes to near zero as we industrialize the heck out of it. What's really important here is the shape of this curve, because here's another look at the cost of DNA sequencing, and you see a very, very similar shape. Very expensive, plateaus for a while, crashes to near zero. And here we have the look at the cost of solar modules, and here again you see exactly the same shape. And in technology after technology after technology, the cost is crashing, meaning that we have all sorts of opportunities, meaning that that's creating a forcing function, meaning it's that much harder to manage it, make sense of it all, and so on. And this is happening across all of these domains that we can see. And this is causing some fascinating effects. Our brains have a tough time with this. Our brains cognitively are all geared to kind of make linear, incremental, predictive kind of estimations. We're very bad cognitively at understanding this exponential growth. And this is causing a lot of stress, and I'll give you a couple of examples a bit later about how dramatically that's happening. When we apply that to industries, we've seen kind of this transformation happen where the vast majority of our history is the sheer physicality of the world. All the business models, value creation, revenue came from the sheer extracting resources, assembling raw material, moving things around. But little by little, we're shifting that around, and now we're seeing completely digitally driven information environments, cloud environments, and so on. And all the value creation comes from moving things, virtualizing things, managing things in the cloud. I write in the book that the Tesla is not really a car with computers and sensors in it. It's really a computer with wheels, right? And you think of it very differently when you look at it from that perspective. Actually, one of our alumni corrected me on that, said, you're wrong about that. Remember that it updates itself every few weeks. So you have to think of it as an app that has wheels. And that really kind of breaks your brain, because see, the directionality of that is totally correct. Right? And we're heading that way. The updates that we have in that car are quite profound, and I'll give you an example of that. So as a result of kind of a bunch of technologies moving this quickly, we see four major dynamics happening. The first is very obvious. We're digitizing the world very quickly. Right? Our memories aren't in our heads anymore. They're in our smartphones. All our relationships are now digital because of social media as opposed to analog. About 10 years ago, we had maybe 500 million internet-connected devices out in the world. We're up today to about 15 billion. Ericsson made this prediction that we'd be at 50 billion by the end of the decade. But because this is doubling every year or so, pretty quickly after that, we're going to get to 1 trillion. Okay? Think of that one statistic, 15 billion today going to 1 trillion in the next few years. We think we're 30, 40 years into the information revolution. On this statistic, we're at 1.5%. We're just starting. Right? So most of this disruption is ahead of us as opposed to behind us, and we can see the speed with which we're digitizing all sorts of domains around us. One of my favorite examples is this one. This team out of Israel can take a 10-second clip of your voice, and just by analyzing the variation in the tone, they can assess your mood and your attitude to about an 85% accuracy. On like 400 different categories. Customer service teams are using this today. If an angry customer calls, what's the underlying attitude? You know, can you save the account, or do you just hang up the phone and move on because you've lost them anyway, right? You can actually download this app called Moody's if you want to try this out. Try this out on your spouse if you want to have an interesting discussion about their mood. That one, of course, doesn't go very well. But it starts to get very surreal. I was speaking at one of our conferences recently, and while I was on stage, one of our alumni taped 13 seconds of my voice and showed the results to the audience. So that was my mood and my attitude as I was speaking on stage, which gets totally kind of unnerving. Of course, totally wrong about the stubbornness. I disagree fundamentally with that, and you see how kind of weird that gets. We actually did an event a year ago during the presidential debates. So while Trump and Clinton were speaking and debating, we had a ticker saying, here's what they're really thinking, which I won't kind of reveal here for political correctness. Now, we found that when you digitize something, it becomes highly, highly disruptive. And the scale of this is hard to imagine. I'll just pick one example. Take solar energy. Energy has been scarce for the entire history of humanity, and it's about to become abundant. We're seeing the cost of solar price crash dramatically. In about 14 years, we will be able to deliver enough energy with solar to power the entire planet in 14 years, because that doubling pattern keeps going, right? And so this is going to cause a complete change in geopolitics globally. The Middle East has enormous issues. The Athabasca oil sands in Canada, I'm Canadian, I've been yelling at the Canadian government, they will never be used because of this dynamic and so on. And we're seeing sort of quite chaotic effects as a result of it. The country of Chile today is already generating so much solar, they're giving it to their neighbors for free. That's happening today. In California, a quarter of the farms are already solar powered. And maybe in the ultimate of all ironies, the Coal Museum in Kentucky is now using solar panels to power themselves, right? And how do they look in the mirror? Because like this, and you can see this kind of pattern now emerging in all of these technologies and all of these industries, and we're seeing quite extraordinary disruption. I actually tried to live this myself. 18 months ago, I took a Tesla and I drove from Miami all the way up to Toronto. I'd stopped at the charging stations every kind of 100 miles or so. The car drove itself for a big chunk of the time. And because the charging stations were free, the entire trip cost me $0. That was a Gutenberg moment. Right? In the 1500s, the printing press changed everything. This will change everything. More interestingly, a month ago, I came back. And I want to show you the data here. Look at that statistic at the bottom there. When I drove up 18 months ago, the car drove itself about 35% of the time. When I drove back, same car, same sensors, the car drove itself about 80% of the time. Just in the change of the data, the ability to manage data in the cloud, the ability to leverage algorithms and know how much better the car is moving, that many more cars going down the same highway. Fascinating to see that trip. Right? I will never, when we came back to Miami a few weeks ago, I said to my wife, you fly, I'll take the car. I made about 80 conference calls along the way. It was a complete paradigm shift. And this is what's happening today. Today we have about 20 such Gutenberg moments all hitting us at the same time. And our ability to manage this is going to be incredibly difficult and stressful as a result of that. Because the technologies are all very sexy. I could kind of go on for a long time about that. But we have a really fundamental issue at a very pervasive level, which is that we are not ready as a society to absorb this pace of change. In fact, I'll argue that every mechanism that we use to run the world, our civics, our politics, our legal systems, our healthcare systems, intellectual property, education, computation, et cetera, all designed for a world a few hundred years ago, not for today. And definitely not for the trillion sensors that are coming. We actually need to re-architect it pretty much from the ground up. Let me give you two examples. An obvious one is education. Right? We designed our education systems pretty much globally to take a young child, train them through their early 20s with specific skills to be ready for the existing job market. Right? Except small problem. We don't know what a job looks like in 5 years. What are we teaching them? Right? And so that's starting. And yet if you try and update education, you have what I call the immune system response. The teachers' unions will attack you. The textbook publishers will attack you. The regulators will attack you. And we see this pervasively in every mechanism. You try and update a legacy environment with disruptive new ideas, and you'll get this immune system fight back. The taxis fighting Uber. And we see this on all of our departments. If you try and update how you did things the way to match what's happening in the world today, the legacy thinking will come and attack you. And I saw this at Yahoo when I was running their incubator in very sharp relief. I was set up in a separate office. We're looking at the empty office space with my developers. And a truck rolls up with furniture full of cubicles in Dilbert hell. And the guy says, I'm from facilities, I'm here to deliver the furniture. And we're like, no, 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 we don't want this because we want like bean bags and ping pong tables. And he's like, no, no, my bonus depends on me delivering the furniture. I'm coming in, right? And I'm like, well, how do I get rid of it? And he goes, not my problem. Right? And I spent like the afternoon on the phone calling his boss and his boss's boss and my boss and my boss. Finally, I'm able to get rid of the guy, right? And I'm finally at peace because my developers are not going to be there if I have kind of standard furniture the way we've done it before. 2 weeks later, same truck, same furniture arrives, same driver. And I said, what happened? I thought we dealt with this. And he goes, my manager changed, noticed you didn't have the furniture. I have a direct order to come in and deliver the furniture. And all my developers walked out of the office. It was like, we didn't come here for this. But yellow and purple colored couches, the hell with that. And so he's not being a bad guy, right? He's just doing what he's incented to do because all of our organizations are designed for efficiency and for predictability. They are not designed for agility, flexibility, adaptability, and yet that is the driving force today. And this applies pervasively to all of our institutions. Take something on a slightly lighter note like marriage. We invented marriage about 9,000 years ago. And when marriage first surfaced as an institution, average lifespan was about 25 years old. So you got married, you had kids, and you died. Marriage is not designed to last 50, 60 years. That's state-sanctioned torture, basically is what it is, right? And so how do you update that institution? We get really stressed out about the divorce rate and so on. It is not designed for what we're putting it through today. And this applies, as I said, pervasively across the board. So we need a very deep mindset shift. And this forcing function of technology is a driver that cannot be ignored. Kevin Kelly wrote this book called What Technology Wants, showing that you cannot slow it down. It's moving at its own pace. If you try and stop it in one area, it goes to another area. And our heads it's very hard to get our heads around this. When the Google car came out 8-9 years ago, the cost of the LiDAR, GPS sensors, radar added up to about $200,000 a car. And all the car companies looked at that and said, cute research project, and ignored it. 2 years later, it was $100,000 a car. 2 years later, $50,000 a car. Even then, the response was, who's going to pay $50,000 for all those sensors? We're down below $1,000 a car today for all the sensors, and everybody's freaking out now. Right? The cost of this LiDAR unit at the top of this Prius cost $75,000 5 years ago, and you can get that today for $50. Why? Because you have several accelerating technologies all combining, and the aggregate effect is a huge multiplier. And of course, the next version will be $10, and it will disappear, dematerialize completely into our smartphones. And this is really driven by the sheer democratization. Today, anybody can pick up enter a legacy industry with a new technology and totally disrupt it. Elon Musk's Hyperloop idea is an example. It used to be that disruptive innovation only came from a big corporate lab or a government lab. And now today, anybody can do this. Elon is about to launch his big satellite and his rockets today. And his MO, by the way, is really simple. He looks at the technologies that's accelerating, like neural technology or battery technology, aims 10 years out. Where will it be in 10 years? And builds a company to intercept that curve. Right? And that works pretty well for him. And because of this, now everybody can get into this, and it's hard to adapt. So the question is, what do you do? How do you adapt your world to this new pace of change? This quote by David Rose has been stuck in my head for quite a few years, and it was one of the reasons I wrote the book. Our organizations are designed for 20th century thinking, not for where the world is today. And so we need to update that. Most importantly, we need to figure out how to update the immune system in our existing environments, our legacy thinking. And maybe the strangest phone call I've received in the few years that I've been thinking about this is from the Vatican. The Pope has the oldest immune system in the world, right? As he tries to update that institution, he has some interesting challenges on his hands. What we found in our model is that if you implement 4 out of 10 attributes, you actually get a 10x multiplier in your organizational effectiveness. And so we've kind of crafted that model. But most importantly, the work that we've been doing recently is we've figured out a 10-week process that solves that immune system problem. We take the senior management of a company, we get them together, we do a session that freaks them out to show them how disruptively the world is changing. And then we take the young leaders, future lieutenants of that business, they do a set of work to say, how would you grow this business 10x within a few years? And then we help launch those. And we piloted this 2 years ago with Procter & Gamble. We've now done it about a dozen times. And we found a 10-week process that moves the culture, leadership, management thinking 3 years ahead in that 10-week period. So we're pretty excited about this. We're actually writing a book on this to open source the process so that anybody can do it, self-provision it, and run it. Because my current thesis is every one of the Global 5,000 has to go through this process, with or without us. Right? And it's really important to do this. We've also applied this to cities, where we take a city and we take them through a similar process, and we found we can solve a problem facing a city for about 1/10 of the current cost. We've run it 4 times in Medellin, and we just finished with the mayor of Miami on the future of transportation, and we're open sourcing that as well. So we now have, for the first time ever, a structured way in which to move our culture, leadership, management thinking very quickly forward, rather than waiting for a long time. Because today, technology is a massive forcing function. A dozen technologies all accelerating gives us a pressure that we've never seen before, and we desperately need to adapt our old ways of thinking. And in the cloud world or the security world, the patterns and the mechanism that we've been using for 20, 30 years don't apply with the threat vector that's appearing today. So we really need to do this, especially in that world, because as we kind of expose ourselves with that explosion of data, we absolutely need to update how we think about the world in that way. So really looking forward to this panel. Thank you for having me. And Renee, thanks for having me again here. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Salim. Thank you very much. Let's hear it again for Salim. Okay, while we let Salim's amazing talk set in the next section of our event today, I'd like to introduce our 4 expert cloud panelists who have broken through their own corporate immune systems to be disruptive. And we'll give you just a taste of where they are in their cloud journey. So, in alphabetical order, in case you thought we were playing favorites here, Capital One. Capital One plans to maintain as their hybrid environment AWS as a predominant survivor. They have moved core bank and card processing systems, mobile and web applications, and a large number of their back-end office applications to the cloud. From Capital One, we have their lead cloud platform engineer, Kyle Busikist. Coca-Cola is planning to be out of their data centers by this summer. They've already successfully migrated 30 to 40% of their apps to the cloud. From the Coca-Cola company, we have their Director of Applications, Security Operations and Engineering, Puneet Veer. PwC has a variety of business units with very different cloud needs. Their primary cloud is Microsoft Azure, but they also use Google Cloud and AWS. From PwC, we have their global head of security architecture, engineering and innovation, Pablo Salazar. And last, but certainly not least, Schlumberger plans to maintain a hybrid environment across public and private clouds, PaaS and SaaS. From Schlumberger, we have CISO Emeritus and current Schlumberger Fellow, Mario Chalk. Well, gentlemen, it's fantastic to have us all together here today, and I thought that Salim's take on this was very interesting. Now, what we have here is 4 very different global enterprises, all within different stages of their journey to the cloud. And already, right, we will see that what they do and how they do it isn't the same, and there isn't just one correct way to get into the cloud. Now, Salim talked about this immune system, the immunity to change. And Pablo, maybe you want to take that on first. Last night when we spoke, you said PwC exhibited some immunity of its own. Tell me a bit more about that.
I was actually very surprised at the level of resistance throughout the organization. I wasn't surprised so much on the legal and compliance side because I knew that they needed to be educated about the cloud. It was something very new. But even the developers, there were things that I thought were no-brainers like PaaS services. But when you have a number of developers who've been doing the same thing, the same way for a number of years, they had to be educated as well.
Now, what means did you use to break through that resistance? Because there was the resistance, but then what?
I think there were a couple of factors. I think one is trying to front-run a lot of the resistance by educating the developers and others as to what the cloud is, how it differs from the data center. And then I think also it was just really the group seeing the cloud work. And after we'd moved a number of workloads in the cloud, they saw it wasn't a catastrophe. We could do business in the cloud. And that really lessened the resistance quite a bit.
Right. So what you're saying is you just go do it and enable folks to go there and they'll see themselves what the advantages are.
That's exactly right.
Very true. Now, Kyle, your team also took a very interesting approach, right, to dealing with the resistance and get early buy-in. So what did you do?
We did. So we adopted a cloud-first mindset, and we opened up development very early in our journey, and we pushed all of our development to the cloud. And what that gave us was the ability for the application developers to get hands-on experience, which we found was critical. And they could play with the different services available from the cloud providers. And they actually built more cloud-native apps when they had their hands on the services.
Yeah. Now, Salim made an interesting observation that a Tesla is an app on wheels. You made a similar observation about Capital One last night.
Yeah, so we took one of our more high-profile apps, so our mobile app, and we said if we put this in the cloud and we do it right, then the rest of the development teams in our organization should be able to follow suit,
right.
And they did.
But you also said that you don't think of yourself as a bank anymore.
Oh no, yeah, we're more of a technology company running a bank, and that's how we're innovating and staying on the cutting edge.
Exactly, yeah. Now, when you took this approach to change, how did it work out? Because I must imagine that you had to learn and that not everything went fine the first way. So what was one of those factors that helped you achieve the change?
For us, it was getting people to treat the cloud as disposable compute resources and not do a lift and shift and move all the things that we've done, good or bad, in the data center for the last 15, 20 years into the cloud. And once you get past that hurdle and getting people on board and not, like Pablo said, not doing what they've always done, we were able to get them to think and use cloud services in the way that they were designed to use.
Now, Puneet, when I read the intro, that's a very bold statement about moving out of your traditional data centers and into the cloud. Did you see resistance to that idea? And because those are some very tight deadlines. But this summer, you want to be out of your data center. So what did you do?
No, absolutely. It was a multi-pronged approach, and it was disruptive. And it was not just the technology part. That was the easy part. It was more about the people and process. We actually revisited all our policies and said, okay, how do we make it easy for the cloud? And it's not cloud first, but cloud only kind of a thing. Have the right set of people working together and make sure that they're enabled, right? And we had to do a top-up and bottom-up kind of an approach and work with all the management, change the policies, change the way we did. And then one of the first app that I wanted to take to the cloud was, believe it or not, was Active Directory domain controllers. Which people were always scared. I said, if we can take this securely and prove that these are secure in the cloud, then I don't think anything else can be said that it cannot be moved. So we took Active Directory domain controllers, worked with the different cloud providers, had the new set of cloud security requirements and standards. And we, in fact, overrode some of the policies that were in the organization for the last 20 years and changed that mindset. And that helped us. Once I was able to prove that, we have these domain controllers working securely in the cloud, I think after that, there was no looking back.
So what I hear you recommend is don't take an obvious application like a customer-facing web app, but take something really hard and secure, put that in the cloud first, and that will then guide the organization to change.
Yeah, we put the standard for the most critical apps out there, then everything else out after that is going to be easy for you to and get the teams lined up. Yeah. Setting up the right teams to work together was a critical aspect out here. That's, I think, one of the biggest challenges I would say is that, and it has to be disruptive. Yeah. If you think this is going to be a simple, easy journey, I think then you're on the wrong journey. Right. You have to make it disruptive. Otherwise, you're not making changes.
Pablo, I hear a lot of stories from folks like you in global enterprises that it's still kind of siloed. Right? There's the haves and the haves not, the goes and the don't goes. How do you break through that?
I think that I came to a realization at some point in the process that even though technologically we were moving into the cloud, we were moving a lot of the data center mentality, governance, organization into the cloud as well. And when you have developers that want to kick off a build from a Slack channel, and they want that deployed on immutable infrastructure with all of the security embedded in near real time, those siloed organizations, those mentalities, they don't work. And so that's a process we had to go through, and it's a process we're still going through.
Yeah, it's very important, isn't it, Puneet? I'm sure that you guys went through a similar move when you make those bold statements.
Oh no, absolutely. Yeah, the line starts getting blurry between what the network, security versus what infrastructure securities are. Now with the developer, with the just a click of a button can enable any machine workload to be talking to the internet. Before that used to be a six-week change control, getting the network team and getting the infrastructure team to make those changes. Yeah. So you're empowering team at the same time. You have to go with a different mindset in that, and the silos have to be broken down. You got to make sure the developers understand what are the implications and the risk. And you have to take a risk-based approach on these things.
Now, Mario, Schlumberger is a very old company, right? I'm sure very resistant to change, and yet you guys did an amazing strategy around cloud. So tell us a bit how you drove, because you personally were very involved in that change at Schlumberger.
So the first thing is Schlumberger was involved on a major digital transformation program. And moving to the cloud was one of those things, part of the digital transformation program. We had a lot of resistance, especially a lot of people did not want to move to the cloud, and they used security as an excuse. And I was able to actually convince them that we could actually be much more secure in the cloud if we do it right. And the main thing that I think was very successful was education, educating the stakeholders on what the cloud is, what the cloud can do for you, and the advantage of the clouds. So,
yeah, Kyle, was that the same for you guys? Because you've been around for a while. But was it hard then to convince those folks and tool them? Because tooling is a very important element of your strategy, you told me. So tell us a bit more about how you got everybody on board and how you used your own tooling to do that. And what you're doing with tooling, by the way, for the rest of society, because you guys are doing some amazing things there as well.
We are. So the first thing we did was we took the people that understand how to run the applications and put them with the teams building the applications. And there was a lot of cross-training that went in there as well, because the teams are now going to be responsible for their own infrastructure in the cloud. So when you deploy your application, you're no longer going to stop doing anything for that application. In the old days, you built an application, and the only time you touched it was during an incident, or whether you were doing upgrading the hardware or something like that. Now it's yours for the entire life cycle of the app. And we've thought that when we put those operational support members with the developers, we were able to get better processes for automated deployments. And some of the other things we did around security is the same way, as we co-located our security team similar. And being a tech company now, or we want to be a tech company, yes. Part of that is building your own software. So if there is not a tool available for us to do better automated deployments at the scale that we need, we go ahead and write our own. And as again, part of the technology company, we give that back to the internet. And Cloud Custodian is the product that you were talking about, yes.
Yeah, Salim mentioned that a lot of the best practice that he and Singularity University build is going to be public domain, but you follow the same thread, which is if you build great tools, then society should benefit from it, right? Which the cloud brings as a mentality as a whole. Now, Mario, you have made a decision to be hybrid, right, for a long time. Can you give us a bit of an idea how you decide which applications stay and which don't?
So Schlumberger is a very large company. Not every application will actually be able to, even with a different cloud service provider, it may or may not work very well. So some of the criteria to decide which application goes, we built a decision tree. And basically, it had to do with security. How much, a very good example is, do you enable federation authentication? Can you do two-factor authentication? Yeah. But also, whatever the back-end database was, that was another criteria. But the goal is to move out of our traditional data centers and be completely into the cloud. Probably we won't move everything, but whatever is left over, we will have to sunset at some time.
Yeah. Now, Mario, you made a very profound statement. You said, I believe that the cloud actually is more secure than us doing it ourselves.
It can be.
It can be, yes. I think that's what you said. Yes, that's what you said.
Yeah.
Do you guys share that thought? Because that's a very profound change in mentality. Puneet?
I would say it is, believe it or not. I think what the cloud providers have done today, there's no way that you as an organization can build that kind of security on-prem. So for us, I won't say that it can be. I will say that it is, period. And from our perspective, there is nothing that can be actually moved to the cloud with the right risk control and the right security controls.
Pablo, you guys are an auditor yourself.
Yes.
So from that perspective, how do you think about the statement that Mario made? Do you believe that from an audit perspective, from a compliance perspective, we can argue that eventually the cloud will be more secure?
I would absolutely agree. I would agree that it is more secure today. I think there's an education aspect with the different auditors because many auditors are still coming to look at the cloud with a data center mentality. Yeah. So we have to change our mindset as well as organizations move into the cloud.
Yeah. Now, Kyle, I want to dive a little bit more into the security question with you. What can you say about the ownership of security within Capital One? Has that changed when you guys embraced the cloud the way you did?
Partially it has. So when you push security resources down with the developers, they're actually starting to develop their apps with security in mind. And that's the first step in having any kind of secure app in the cloud. But we didn't just leave it there. We also built the tools, and part of what you get out of the cloud and what makes it more secure than your data center is the visibility into everything that's happening. So you get real-time feeds of actions happening in your cloud environments. And we've built tooling to take in those feeds and react on them. And that way we can make sure that all the applications as they're deployed maintain our, up to our security standards.
Have you guys gone through a similar change in ownership and how early you start with combining application functionality and security? Yeah?
Yes, absolutely. That for us, that was a pivotal point. And I think having the security mindset and be able to have the developers have the same mindset actually helped us. Now they're thinking about security from the very get-go.
Mario?
Yes, we have actually empowered developers to have a security mind. And we have actually recently implemented what we call the cloud driver's license. If you really need to work in the cloud, you need to obtain this driver's license with the proper training.
Yeah. Mario, you mentioned digital transformation at Schlumberger. Can you give an example of what that means?
So digital transformation is not about technology. It's about changing the way we work. And we want to actually don't make small changes, but completely. So we have actually got a business, and we asked them, what, if you were in charge, what would you do? And what are the things that work and don't work? And then we use technology to be able to enable the digital transformation. Yeah. So for me, changing the way we work is digital transformation. And the biggest issue on digital transformation is you need to make sure that you have good change management and good communications.
Puneet, we were talking about Coca-Cola last night and digital transformation. Can you give an example of what you guys do as an organization?
Oh, no, absolutely. First of all, the journey started us with moving to the cloud and having a digital platform and standardization. And a few years back, you would say that the Coca-Cola should be arm's reach away. Now we're looking at it should be a click away. So that's the kind of journey we are going as a company, and we want to make sure that the Coke is available to you at a click away. Yeah. So that's what our executives are looking at, and that having the support really helps us to have this whole digital framework and mindset.
Yeah, we talked about an interesting example last night is how does Coca-Cola know that at the Super Bowl they have to have peach Coca-Cola, right, or mango Coca-Cola? And that is because the machines that mix these drinks, right, on demand, right, in fact, talk back to Coca-Cola and tell what people like and how people consume Coca-Cola. And that is a very novel way of thinking about product development as well. Yep. Yeah. Kyle, that transformation with you has certainly started because you think of yourself already as a technology company. How does that then play out with your customers? What is different to them?
So for us, it's getting the services that they want to them faster. So our Alexa app is a good example. So we're now starting to interact with technology and things in the cloud just by speaking. Yep. And publishing an Alexa app that gives you the ability to check your balance and pay bills and things like that is how we've started moving in that direction.
And people are comfortable with that?
Yes, they are.
Okay. Because you make them comfortable with it, right? Yes. A lot of the digital transformation resistance that Salim also mentioned is that, yeah, a lot of the way that we do things is not necessarily in line with this thinking, but we'll get there. Now, with a minute or so left, any good advice that you can give this very large crowd of 15,000 plus people out there. One hint, one tip. Mario, I start with you.
So for me, what you need to do is when you go into the cloud, I think start working with a good governance. You need to have a good governance. When we first start going into the cloud, myself and the security team used to get blamed for a lot of things. And with the governance now, the governance starts with the senior executives. Yeah. And the goal of the technology people is to educate our senior executives on the risk, and then they will make the right decision and see how much risk acceptance or risk appetite do they have.
Right. Time for one more. Pablo.
I would just say, don't break the cloud.
Don't break the cloud.
And what I mean by that is we don't go into the migration, into embracing the cloud with that data center mentality. You need to throw all that away, and you need to start with a cloud mentality, cloud-first mentality, and then build from there.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for all of your very hard-won insights. Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for our panelists.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, and now it's time for some very, very big news. I know that you've been waiting for this part. I'll keep it short so that we can get right to the big announcement of this afternoon. My good friend Lee Klarich is our Chief Product Officer. Please join me in welcoming Lee.
Thank you, Renee. Thank you. Thank you, Renee. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you all for joining us remotely. Big thank you to the panelists for sharing their stories with us today. I don't know about you, but I really enjoy listening to them talk about not just the business value they're getting out of the cloud, but the challenges they faced and how they worked through those challenges. I certainly learned a lot from it, and I like to think that all of you can learn a lot from hearing them as well. You know, it's clear that there's a tremendous amount of business value that all of you can get from the cloud. It's also clear that there's a lot of challenges in adopting the cloud, some of which are just general challenges with how you secure applications, but a number of challenges that are also very unique to the cloud. And so I wanted to share my perspective a bit on how we can approach the cloud from a security perspective in order to really get that full benefit of the cloud. And you know, when I use the word cloud, everyone kind of uses their own kind of definition. I think of a few different primary use cases of the cloud. Certainly there's a lot of activity around taking a traditional data center application and sort of creating a private cloud, dynamic, automated environment, but still owned within your infrastructure. There's public cloud, moving the applications into someone else's infrastructure, but it's still your application, you're still operating it. And of course, there's simply consuming applications as services in the form of SaaS. And all of these can provide tremendous value. And in fact, what we generally see is that most of you are doing all of these, not just one. There is no one cloud. There is no just one application that you're using the cloud. There's a lot of multi-cloud, hybrid cloud usage out there. And that's great. And in fact, you can get a tremendous amount of value by consuming and deploying applications where they're best suited for, but there's also a lot of challenges that come with that. And some of these challenges simply come out of having applications all over the place. You can very quickly, if you're not paying attention, end up with very fragmented security architecture, which is pretty much impossible to operate. Ultimately, reduces the amount of security you have, creates costs, and you start to lose the real value of the cloud. You also see a lot of folks, the application moves first, and then they try to catch up with it. In the process of doing that, they take the manual security processes that they used to use in the physical data center, and they try to migrate those to the cloud. Doesn't work. And the other thing you see is small human errors get magnified really quickly in the cloud. And it can be a little bit unnerving and scary, but can be ultimately dealt with. And so ultimately, we think that if you take the right approach to this from a security perspective, all of these challenges can be overcome. It starts, of course, with having great security. We don't believe that you have to compromise security in order for things to be easy, that ultimately you need both of these. Second, you need to be able to provide consistent security anywhere your applications might be deployed. You have to fight the challenge of fragmented security and having everything be different everywhere you have a different application. It needs to be consistent. Attacks will find their way in through the least secure vector. And third, it has to be easy. It has to be frictionless. You can't secure the cloud by reducing all the benefits of the cloud. The cloud is dynamic, it's automated, it automatically scales, it moves around. Security needs to be able to keep up with this in a highly automated, frictionless way in order to get that full benefit. And so, if you come back to the same picture, if we do this right, you get the full benefits of the cloud. You get to take full benefit of deploying applications and consuming application from every location in a highly secure and safe way. Now, for this event, I actually want to focus in on one aspect of the cloud and talk about a number of the really unique and exciting things that we have to announce today, and talk about public cloud, infrastructure as a service and platform as a service, and increasingly how those come together. Because one of the things that we've seen over the last several years is the way in which applications are architected for the cloud is changing pretty rapidly. If we were having this conversation, even just a few years ago, we'd probably be talking a lot about lift and shift of applications from the data center into the cloud. You don't change anything other than the location of where that application is deployed. Today, that actually doesn't happen nearly as much as it used to. There's a lot more applications that are being architected for the cloud. And as that's happening, we see a lot more combinations of infrastructure as a service combined with platform as a service together to make up that cloud application. And this is great. There's a lot of benefit to doing this, but it does introduce a number of new challenges. And often, if you take a look at this and think about what the traditional ways to secure these applications are, you kind of are left feeling not so great. You have cloud-native security, not bad, but certainly not sufficient for what you need to accomplish from a security perspective, and certainly not going to deal with the consistency across all locations where applications can be deployed. Then you have these cloud-specific point products, which really aren't going to get the job done. They don't, point products we've seen even on-premise don't work. You can't integrate them all together. You can't take advantage of them. And actually, many of these in the cloud aren't really designed as much for security as they're designed for being frictionless, but you need security still. And then the third choice definitely isn't the right choice, which is taking legacy products that are designed for physical environments and trying to cram them into the cloud in hopes that somehow that's going to do something for you. Unfortunately, you don't get the security you need, and you're going to get in the way of all the benefits of the cloud. And so when we were thinking about this, and we sort of took a step back and thought, what actually needs to happen? And as we thought about this new architecture of applications, we still start with looking at inline security. Traffic coming into the application, traffic between applications, traffic leaving the application, that is still a very critical location where security has to take place. Second, though, we started looking at, in particular, a lot of these PaaS services, but even infrastructure as a service capabilities, and realized there's a very rich set of APIs that are exposed through these applications and services that we need to take advantage of. It provides a very unique opportunity to see exactly how the applications are configured and how they're being used. And third, the host. Any endpoint, laptop, server, virtual, doesn't matter. There's a very unique opportunity on the host to secure that application, that operating system, and in particular, to be able to look for, detect, and prevent even zero-day attacks that haven't been seen before. And so ultimately, we believe that these three capabilities need to be combined together. And of course, we have the VM series, which is our solution to inline security, full next-gen firewall capabilities and security designed and architected for the cloud. We have Aperture, which focuses on the APIs and understanding these infrastructure and platform services and gaining access to a very valuable set of information for security purposes. And third, we have Traps on the host, designed to protect the host in a very lightweight fashion and prevent against attacks. And so this is how we see security now being architected for the cloud and bringing together the right technologies in the right places in the right ways. Now, I want to switch to a video real quick. I want to hear from one of our longtime strategic partners in the cloud, Scott Guthrie from Microsoft. Roll the video.
My name is Scott Guthrie, and I'm the Executive Vice President of the Cloud and Enterprise Group here at Microsoft. One of the things that we're seeing, obviously, is that every organization out there is looking to take advantage of the cloud in some way, shape, or form. And one of the things that's obviously critical for any enterprise to adopt the cloud is security, and having a solution that enables them to know that as their organizations start to deploy workloads, they're following best practices, that they have the right monitoring in place, and in particular, having a security architecture that works in a hybrid space and has the flexibility to be able to see both what's in public cloud as well as what might already be inside their data center or other partner facilities that they take advantage of. Finding ways that we can help enable organizations to actually fuse those different seams and be able to still provide the agility that individual departments want, but at the same time be able to provide a unified view of the security posture, the security best practices, and the security policies, and to be able to monitor that consistently, I think is the holy grail that organizations are looking for. And part of what we've done with, for example, our Azure Security Center is provide that type of view at the organization level, and then we've partnered very closely with Palo Alto so that we can actually fuse our signals together and be able to provide that unified signal both in public cloud as well as on premises. And I think that ultimately is kind of what organizations are looking for and really helps them be secure and adopt cloud even faster.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Scott, for contributing to this event. There's some new stuff we have to talk about. Renee mentioned this, and I'm certainly honored and excited to be able to share with you for the first time a number of really exciting enhancements to our security platform for the cloud. And I want to start with inline security. This is an area that we've been making investments in for many years now, and every launch, every release, we continue to push the ball forward. And a lot of this actually comes down to how we make the VM series even more seamlessly, more easy, more frictionless fit into these cloud environments. And today there's a number of things we're announcing to make this even better. Starting with AWS. We've learned a lot from the last few years of our auto-scaling capabilities, and we've completely revamped those, making them easier, more efficient, more scalable. Really excited to be able to take our learnings and bring them back into the product. We're also announcing the ability to support a new use case within AWS, the AWS Transit VPC architecture. I'll explain it to you later, maybe. But really important architectural capability for how you can design and deploy your applications and make it really easy to automate the inclusion of security into these environments. On the Azure side, you heard Scott mention already the integrations we have with Azure and extending those into the Azure Security Center and application insights, both of which just make it a lot easier to kick off automated processes, monitor resources, use that monitoring to drive additional capabilities and scaling. Really excited about that. We also will be supporting in the next few days, similar to AWS, an Azure Transit VNet architecture as well. Again, bringing the same kind of automation to application deployment and adding security in these environments. And really excited to announce support for Google Cloud Platform, adding to the cloud environments that we can secure. And we've been working with Google actually now for quite a while to make sure that when we came out with support for GCP, it wouldn't just be something that checks the box, it'd be something to be really usable. So starting day one, we'll have support for the Google Marketplace, we'll have support for automated deployments, we'll have support for dynamic policy updates, and a number of other really critical capabilities in GCP. In addition to this, Panorama, which is the central management solution for all of our next-gen firewalls, including the virtual instances, is being upgraded as well. In addition to having the hardware form factor, the virtual form factor for private cloud environments, Panorama will now be deployable in public cloud environments as well, allowing it to sit side by side with the VM series that is managing and supporting and just basically giving you a lot more flexibility for deployment options as well. Now, I want to take the time, listen to another video from one of our longtime strategic partners, Dave McCann from AWS.
I'm Dave McCann, head of AWS Marketplace and Service Catalog. As our customers experience the benefit of the innovation that they perform on AWS, they're moving more and more of their workloads. We secure everything from the host down and manage all of that capability and take the risk away from the customer. The guest and the application in the guest is the responsibility of the customer to control, and so clearly Palo Alto Networks, you've been innovating with us now for several years to make it easy for our customers to secure the applications on the guest. As our customers adopt our methodology, you end up with a lot of DevOps teams who are moving at speed, and yet all organizations have a CISO, they have a security team. That's usually a small security team who wants to have a high confidence that teams building and deploying applications are deploying them in a secure way. We've worked hard to take the friction out of the customer experience to both purchase, deploy, and manage software in the cloud. And together recently Palo Alto Networks and AWS Marketplace announced joint collaboration on enterprise contract for Marketplace, which is in preview, and 20 corporations, software, and buyers are using a standard contract to simplify the procurement. Our customers look for best-in-class offers, and Palo Alto Networks has achieved the security competency level and a well-architected rating from AWS, which tells our customers to have high confidence in the experience they're going to have of deploying your solution to benefit their business.
Thank you, Dave. I really love how he talks about the need for advanced security, but that is integrated seamlessly and frictionlessly into these cloud environments. Couldn't agree more. Now, I talked about inline security, also previously mentioned API-based security. And this is really very important component of what we can do to secure applications in the cloud. There's just a whole bunch of really important kind of security questions like, is MFA enabled? Who has access to my resources? When did a new set of resources spin up? And were they spun up in a secure way? And are admins behaving normally or abnormally and doing things they shouldn't do? And as sensitive data exposed publicly, there's just this really long list of important security questions where the APIs expose the information to answer these questions. And so early last summer, we took Aperture, which was initially designed, focused on securing SaaS applications, and we realized the underlying technology would work great for securing public cloud applications as well, both infrastructure as a service as well as platform as a service, and we launched the first support for AWS EC2 and S3. And we heard from many of our customers was, this is really valuable. Can you keep going down this path? Expand the capabilities, expand what you can do. And so today we're announcing a lot. We have additional capabilities in Aperture for public cloud, the ability to discover and monitor new resources and use those as triggers for providing security response. We're expanding the storage services that we can provide beyond AWS to now include Azure and Google Cloud Platform. And we're adding compliance reporting to give people the peace of mind that they know that their cloud applications are configured and deployed correctly, and to let them know as soon as they're out of compliance and they need to go do something about it. So very excited about Aperture's new role in securing not only SaaS applications, but public cloud applications as well. But I'd like to hear from a third partner. You can probably guess who that's going to be, Google, and get their perspective on API-based security as well. Roll the video.
My name is Niels Provos. I'm a distinguished engineer at Google and manage most of the security engineering teams. So if you're looking at the news these days, you'll find that every other week you see an article about a company that was compromised, often by state-sponsored actors. They ended up losing a lot of their intellectual property. And the question that I always ask myself is, what can we do to solve this problem? And the API interactions are really the ones that you want to secure. If you end up with a cloud-based solution that gives you the visibility of everything that you run, and then also gives you the opportunity to put security policies in place that secure these applications, that is where you end up being much better off than before. It's really important that customers can do this at scale and as easy as possible. And we're looking forward to our collaboration with Palo Alto Networks to make security even easier to deploy at scale in the future.
Awesome. Thanks, Niels. Really excited to be working with you and all the things we're going to do with Google together. One more area on the host. I mentioned before, the host provides a very unique opportunity to secure at the operating system level and the application level that is unique and very valuable to combine with the network and APIs. And for this, we have Traps. And Traps brings multi-method attack protection to any endpoint, whether it's on-premise or the cloud. And what we're really excited to talk about today is that Traps, in the very near future, is also going to support Linux. Obviously, very important securing applications in the cloud, that most of which run on Linux. And so we bring a lot of those same prevention and security capabilities now and make them even more relevant to applications in the cloud. Now, when you take all of this together, there's just a lot that we are enhancing in the platform. We're enhancing the number of cloud environments that we can support, and we're enhancing everything that we have to secure applications in the cloud. VM series for inline protections, Aperture for API-based protections, and Traps for host-based protections. Really, really excited about the step forward that we're taking. But I think it's interesting to note that this is not our first attempt to secure the cloud. This is part of a long-standing investment that we've been making to provide security for the cloud that dates back many, many years, when we first saw the importance that cloud was going to play in all of your environments. And you go back even to 2013 with the first release of the VM series, taking our full next-gen firewall security capabilities and virtualizing them and starting to design them specifically for cloud environments, all the way through today. And you just see just a tremendous amount of new capabilities we're bringing and making available to you. Now, one thing I do want to point out is sort of across the top is all of the locations that we can secure. This is obviously really important. You have to have great security, but it has to be deployable in the right locations for you where your applications need to be protected. But in addition, across the bottom, what you see is just our ongoing and accelerating investment in all of the automation and orchestration integrations that are necessary to really solve a lot of that frictionless requirement of how security needs to fit in these environments. And just things we're doing around Google Cloud, things we're doing around Ansible and Terraform, things we're doing with AWS and Azure, all of these are really designed to make sure that anywhere your application needs to be protected, we have security for that, but it can be deployed and integrated in a very seamless fashion. And so we're really excited about the announcements we're making today, all the new capabilities we're bringing to market. And of course, to keep this in perspective, this is part of a broader security platform designed to secure your entire organization, obviously the cloud included. Renee?
Thank you, Lee. I couldn't be prouder than everything that you and the team have done and the partnerships that we have forged. Now, for the folks on the stream, this is the end of the presentation and the program. To our audience here, online, and to all the parties that we've hosted around the world, thank you so much for joining this epic event. And for those of you on Twitter whose questions weren't answered yet, we'll get back to you immediately. And with that, thank you so much for being here, and go Palo Alto Networks.